and welcome to Mind Gourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of Mind Gourmet and, as always, your host today. My today's guest is Christine Baird, host and creator of the beautiful podcast, The Worthful Project. Welcome, Christine. Thank you for being my guest.
Hi, Nina. I'm really happy we're doing this. Thank you.
Me too. I'm totally happy we are making it through. I think we've been speaking about it for the first time maybe a year ago or so. And I'm very happy because owning and knowing my worth is a very big topic in my life. And I don't know anymore exactly how it happened, but when I came across you and the Worthful Project, I just had to know more. And I loved it, and I contacted you, and I so much enjoyed the conversations you and I had over the last year that I'm super happy we are getting to record one today.
Me too.
And so I would like to open our conversation with you telling us a little more about who are you actually, what brought you to where you are today, and why did you create this beautiful project, the Worthful Project?
Okay, there's so many pieces of the story that weave into how I decided to create Worthful Project, but I'll try to summarize the things I think are most important. So I grew up in the US, a really standard childhood. I always excelled in school. Everything was kind of easy. I had a great home life. And so by the time I graduated college and was entering the workforce, I hadn't really ever had a reason to doubt my worth. Everything had kind of come easily to me. And I entered the workforce and was in this really intense sales job. And for the first time in my life, I was bad at something. Like, it was hard. I didn't know I was going to be good at it. And in the same breath, I just graduated college. I was trying to navigate adult life. And so I just threw myself into work and trying to model other people's versions of success, because I was like, I don't even know, but I can't fail because I've never done that before. So over the next several years, I was working insane hours at a job. I was running myself into the ground. I was, still being really social. I was in this long distance, brutal, toxic relationship. I burned myself out while everyone else around me was being like, you're amazing. You can do so much. Like, you're so incredible. And I was just getting emptier and emptier. And I didn't have any tools. I had never really learned how to acknowledge and be in relationship with my own emotions and the whole spectrum of them. And of course that showed up in my relationships. It showed up in my relationship with myself, began to show up in my health. And ultimately, after about 6 years of this, 90 miles an hour, standard American lifestyle, a very traditional corporate job, I burned out. And I'd had the last maybe year of that, I had started listening to podcasts. So a friend had recommended them to me, and I'd begun running, and I was also driving all over. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. I was driving all over, getting a second college degree because that seemed like a good idea. Maybe I'll try a new career. So I was listening to podcasts, and they were really blowing my mind because I was listening to these conversations with people who were talking about really deep things, very vulnerably, very authentically, and they were explaining things about emotions and relationships and purpose and career and life in a way I'd never heard anyone talk before. So long story short, one day I just woke up and was like, enough is enough. I'm going to shift everything. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to create a new life. And I'm going to learn how to be okay with feeling my feelings and being myself, because whatever I'm doing isn't working. So dramatic life change involving quitting all my jobs, finishing design school, not becoming an interior designer. Instead, I cold emailed one of these podcast hosts and was essentially hustled my way into getting him to hire me, even though I had no skills. And lo and behold, 4 years later, I moved to Los Angeles. I ended up producing the podcast that inspired me to shift my life. It was this incredible new career opened up to me. That's opened up all these different avenues. I've been able to meet so many incredible influencers and learn so much. But the piece that Worthful Project came out of that was the background. So my obsession with podcasts was born out of pain and them becoming sort of a savior to me. And I'd become obsessed, like literally obsessed. I was listening to them nonstop. I started working in them. I started producing them. And so after a couple of years into this new career and entire life change, which included a lot of therapy and coaching and emotional intelligence workshops and all the self-help you can imagine, a couple of years later, I was like, I think I also get to have a podcast, because I kind of am realizing more and more, the more I get to know myself, the more I give myself permission, I get to understand that I have something to offer as well. And even if it's nothing more than sharing my journey, there's something of value, because so many people have been gracious enough to share their journey through podcasts with me that have literally changed my life. Maybe I can make an offering. And of course, it still took me a couple more years to get clear on what that looked like. But the through line through everything, this entire journey, what gave me the courage and what got me through all of the really transformative, fiery experiences of becoming a different version of myself was self-worth. And realizing and coming to terms with the fact that I had given away my self-worth many years before in sort of a desperate need for validation from all these external sources, and that I had disconnected from my own sense of worth. So through many and many, many journaling sessions and conversations with friends and coaching, I finally landed on the idea that maybe the offering I can give to the world is a conversation about what it means to reclaim my worth, to own it, to be in ownership of my worth. And that is where Worthful Project was born. So it's coming up on almost a year ago in December. I sat down to record my very first podcast with one of my dear friends, and the title Worthful had just come to me one day while journaling, because I was journaling about what it means to, like, worthiness, worth. These are very charged words, I think, in our society. And a lot of people, there's, maybe like a religious connotation to them. There's a sort of the balance scale, like, have you earned it? Are you worthy? Like, do your efforts prove, kind of a thing. And as I was journaling about all these ideas, I was like, there's some other term here that people don't talk about. It's like, what about the worth that's innate to us that we can't earn and that we can't prove, and it's simply what we came into the world with? That was what I was really like fascinated with. Like, where did I lose my connection to that piece of me? And it just popped into my head, and I was like, well, it's like you're full of worth, you're worthful. So Worthful Project was born, and it's been an absolute joy. I record an episode once a week and put it out into the world, and it's literally me documenting my journey of learning to reclaim and own my worth, and it's been truly such a joy. So to even know that it's been supportive to any person, and to hear your feedback is the best. I probably will do it forever because I love it so much. But thank you for those words and for listening, because I'm really doing it as an act of service and an act of vulnerability for me to show up and share my experiences.
Oh, I love listening to your episodes. And I think one thing that captured me from the start was the fact that I believe many of us struggle with self-worth, but it's often something, at least it seems to me, that we are actually ashamed of, and that we kind of try to hide as if it was, something that nobody should know. But hearing you talk about this phenomenon of self-worth, and that it's actually a natural and very common thing to, and part of life, just to deal with it and to look at it and to do something about it, made me feel like it's time to stop stigmatizing the worth thing. And I often find myself in what you speak about. And the next thing I would like to ask you in this context is, I remember, I think it was in one of your very first episodes, you said there is a difference between knowing and owning our worth. So how do we know it and how do we own it?
I love this. that's really been the question that inspired this entire project, because, you know, enough time asking these questions to myself and with therapists and friends and coaches, the more feedback that I got, and I think this is really where it starts in answering your question, like, how do you know your worth?
Yeah.
If you feel so disconnected, as you said, societally, there's many messages that tell us we're not enough. How do you even begin to know? Like, knowing is a powerful word. Like, you know your worth, you know, that's audacious to some people. So what I've experienced is the more that I was willing to have honest, vulnerable, open conversations with the people in my life who, you know, cared about me, about what their experience of me was, I kept getting the same feedback. Like, Christine, you're incredible, you're brilliant, you're smart, you're strong, you're inspiring, you're full of light, you have this incredible voice, you are a leader. And the more that I kept getting this feedback that was very consistent as I was working on, you know, kind of honing in on my life's purpose and what I was here to give, it was becoming undeniable. Because, you know, the loop in my head was like, you're never enough, that wasn't good enough, you haven't created enough results, like, you're not enough, keep going. And in the same breath, I kept getting this feedback, like, and I was like, something's not adding up. There's a contradiction here.
Yeah.
So they can't both be true. And that, to me, sort of my entire life, even from like a spiritual foundation, sort of how I was given spiritual guidance as a child, I realized that and this is actually a direct quote from the book Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, which is, you know, quite a treatise on things. But she says in that book, contradictions and truth cannot coexist. If you think you've found one, check your premises. One of them is false. And I've kind of always kept that with me through the years since I read it in that book. And I was like, okay, there is a contradiction going on here. My brain, my ego, kind of the, you know, part of my brain that's committed to my survival but not my evolution, is telling me that I'm not enough and I need to play it safe and hide my light. And like you said, like, not be audacious enough to say that I'm actually worthy of big, important things. And yet all the feedback I'm getting from the people in my life that I respect and trust are saying, you're built for big things. You have this incredible potential. So that's where it started for me. Knowing my worth was a reconciliation. It was me digging in deep, spending a lot of quality time with myself, a lot of journaling, a lot of quiet, a lot of, you know, running and listening and yoga, and just like tuning in and being like, okay, well, what do I think is true here? That's where the knowing came from. And as a result of that process, for me, I think it looks different for everyone, but, you know, I think everybody kind of knows those moments when you're with yourself and you are tuned in and you're really listening, that the knowledge came from there. And it wasn't so much it wasn't like new information. And I've noticed this often when I've talked to friends about, like, how did you reconnect with your worth? And they're like, well, I remembered what I knew as a child. And for some people, you know, very, very early childhood, because a lot of times people go through traumatic things in early childhood that it starts to get eroded quickly. But, like, in my opinion, we come into this world fully intact as far as our worth goes. It's the experiences we have that begin to erode our belief in ourselves.
Yeah.
So reconnecting with that childlike knowledge, like, I'm incredible and I'm of value just because I'm here, not because of anything I've done. So that's the answer to the knowledge portion. The ownership portion is a whole different story, because even after reconnecting to the realization, like, I'm incredible and I know it, and I'm brilliant and beautiful and gifted and have so much to offer, like, that came through, you know, from some practice and some effort. But I was still hiding. It still felt like for years I was like, well, I think I'm amazing. Like, read my journal, there's no question, you know. But it felt like, I'm like, what would people think if I actually showed up like that?
Yeah.
Like, I actually, like, showed up publicly, like, yep, I'm here. I got something good to offer. Like, here it is. You're welcome. Not in an arrogant way, but just in owning, like, yeah, I would love to help. I'm good at that. Yes.
Yeah.
I can do it. And so that's really where the ownership of worth for me became the new challenge. And Worthful Project, if you listen to any of the episodes, that's the through line I keep. That's the, you know, the drum I keep hitting is, it's not enough to know our worth, because if we're not willing to own it, then the world is robbed of our gifts.
Yeah.
Like if we just keep the knowledge inside. So that was a long explanation, but for me, the knowledge has to come first. And for, I think, a lot of us, it's a reconnection. The ownership is the actual physical doing. Like, I'm coming out and I'm showing everyone, here's what I have to offer. May it be of worth. I know it's not perfect, but I think there's some value here. Here you go. Like, I'm okay being seen as someone of worth.
Yeah. Yeah, it so resonates with me. And to connect to one of your most recent episodes, I heard you say, and I totally liked it, that there is a very close relationship between the ownership of our worth and our ability to give and receive. And I think there's something big inside, because sometimes we think like, you can do that also when you're small, but go ahead and explain, because it's so much like your way of approaching that.
Thank you. Yes. So one thing I've learned, and again, this is with so much support, I'm the biggest fan of coaches and therapy resources. Like, none of this came to me on my own. But one of the things I've learned is, when I am trying to hide who I am, for all the reasons we know we do that, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of disconnect, whatever, all the things that our minds come up with. When I'm trying to hide who I am to play it safe, there's literally no way for me to receive all of the abundance and light and gifts and blessings and opportunities and money that people want to give me. Like, my entire being is saying like, no, I don't, like, it's a block, because I don't think I'm worth it. And I clearly, like, if I'm not putting that out into the world, no one's going to think of me when they have the great opportunity. And they're like, oh, you know what? I have this amazing opportunity. I really need someone with this skill set. Who should I call? Well, they're not going to think of me if I'm like hiding in the corner, like barely letting anyone know what I have to offer, right? Versus if I'm in full ownership of who I am, what I can offer, my gifts, my talents, my abilities, as well as my shortcomings, the things I'm not that great at. When I'm in ownership, which means like it's out there, like anyone who comes in contact with me, like they get a full, authentic version of me. They get to see like all the pieces and how they work together as a masterpiece. Of course, when someone has an opportunity, they are going to think of me and the phone rings, or even if it's not related to work. This is something that's been really big for me just recently. In the past few months, I've had an opportunity. I've been coaching, I've been mentoring a leadership program. So I've had an opportunity to get a lot of feedback from people who barely know me, but people I've been coaching. And it's been so extraordinary for me to hear this feedback from people who barely know me. Mm-hmm. And it's always the same. Like, you are so beautiful, you're so strong, you're so powerful, you're so full of light. And I'm like, this is pretty wild, because I just met you 3 days ago, you know, or a month ago. But it's like, when I show up in full ownership, and obviously if I'm, you know, showing up as a coach or a mentor, I'm like, well, I'm not going to hold back. I'm here to serve you. You get all the best of me, you know? So I've been showing up like really like all in, like full on, here's what I have to offer. The feedback has been so clear that's like, they get it. People get it when we show up fully expressed and in ownership of who we are. It translates so much more powerfully than words. It translates so much more powerfully than a job title or like a number in a bank account or, you know, the clothes I'm wearing. When I show up in ownership of my worth, like it's the statement that lets people know who I really am. And so everything I want comes from that. And everything that I want runs away from me when I hide my worth. Because I'm essentially giving the message, like, I don't think I'm worthy of that thing you were thinking of giving me, whether it was a compliment or an opportunity. So that's been my experience. I'm the one who's in control of what I'm bringing towards me based on how I show up.
Yeah. And I like initially, I think it's easier to understand this under the aspect of receiving, because I mean, you have to be there to receive, but it's so true that it has also to do with giving, because you can only give what you really think you have to offer. And I think that is not what sometimes selfless over giving is, because that often comes from a place of smallness, of hoping you deserve, so you give and give and give. And it's interesting to think that when I own my worth, then I can really share with the purpose of sharing and not hoping to be okay because somebody else tells me so.
That's such a beautiful way of putting that. And when you said that last phrase, hoping that somebody sees it in me, that was like the first 27 years of my life. Please yeah. Just see it in me. Like, please don't make me like actually own it. Please don't make me actually like show up like I think I believe this. Like, please, other people validate me. And of course that never happened. It was never enough, no matter how many compliments, no matter how many opportunities came, it never felt like enough. You're right, because I didn't believe I was worthy of it, and I didn't believe that it was enough. I didn't think I was enough. So how on earth was anything anyone else ever gave me going to be enough? It's so simple, but it's why I'm so passionate about it, and why I keep putting my energy into this message. One, because I'm right in the middle of the journey. I'm like, there's so much more for me to learn, but it's because it's that simple. Like, no one's validation will ever be enough if I haven't decided internally and done the work to believe I am worthy of all the things. And that's why the term worthful to me is powerful. It always puts me in a space to immediately remember, this isn't worth that I've earned. It's not like I got the gold medal at the Olympics, so I'm worthy of being on the Today Show. Like, there's like something to be said for that. Like, there's a merit, there's earning. Sometimes we use worthy in the sense of like, you're worthy of that promotion, you put in the hours, you got the results, here's the money. Like, that's awesome. That's how it should be. There's a whole other conversation to worthiness that was what worthful represents. Like, I'm already always full of worth. And that is the ownership that I'm practicing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I like a lot about you is that you are having your very special way of explaining things and choosing your words. And one other thing that really stuck with me is, and I'm putting it into a question, why is owning our worth inviting others to own theirs?
Oh, I really love this question. Thank you for asking. So this is my life. Like, this is what it's really boiled down to. The years of work to learn to own my worth in my own little sphere, my own little knowledge bubble, was really great. But I had plenty of wake-up calls and plenty of messages that told me repeatedly, Christine, you get to share this with others. This is not meant for you to just have and keep to yourself. And so my experience is, when I show up publicly to the world and continue daily, weekly, monthly to be an example and to be authentic and transparent about what it looks like to own my worth, to practice owning my worth, to learn how to own my worth, it has been the most empowering, beautiful grace gift because of the feedback. Like, the people who message me and the people who reach out to me, like, this relationship we've been able to create, yeah, it is just beyond. And it took nothing more from me than to just show up and start publicly sharing who I am, what I'm offering, what I'm learning here in a spirit of service, it has opened the door to relationships. It has opened the door to inspiration that I can't even put into words, like an energy, like a source of light and energy and motivation. And in my experience, kind of back to the question, when I own my worth, of course I get all this like amazing validation that I've been seeking my whole life. Like it comes, it's like a never ending deluge now, because I actually decided first and foremost before anybody else told me, I was like, no, I get it now. I am worthful, and that's never going to go away because I decided it for myself. So now when I show up like that and I'm public about it and I share, of course, it's just like flooding in from all corners. It's, I mean, in my mind, it's like a law of how the universe works. For some people that might like a spiritual law, but it's so important to share that we believe we're worthy. One, because it's inspiring to others, and like you said, in my experience, we're mirrors to each other. We're all mirrors to each other. We're all humans having this experience, so there's not really that much of a difference between us. So we see ourselves in each other, so it's extremely inspiring and supportive. But more than that, it's like the practice, like I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm showing up and practicing publicly. I mean, there's just nothing builds confidence like practice. And it's daily, my relationship with my worth is transforming because I'm showing up and doing the practice.
Yeah. And we've been speaking about before we started recording, and I think I heard it in the episode before the last episode that you were speaking about that so that self-worth can be felt and expressed kind of in waves depending on where you are in your life, and that especially when we go through big changes in our lives, it can actually get so challenged. So how do we own our worth, or let's maybe better say remember or stay connected at least as well as we can? Because I think once we get to a certain low point, it actually takes some work to remember. How do we do that during those transitions that everyone has?
Such an important question. I mean, it's easy to do this on good days, of course.
Yeah.
It's really challenging to do this in the midst of really, really hard experiences and really tough times. And this to me is the whole point of the practice. And so I would love to speak into it. What has been the most supportive for me is habits, like no real surprise here, but the habits that my body already is used to, so that even when my mind is like in chaos or my emotions are on a roller coaster from things going on, my habits ground me and they pull me into behaviors that I know support me no matter what my head and my heart are like dealing with. So for me, it's really simple. And these are habits I've developed through trial and error and practice. So it looks different for everyone. But my habits are a morning routine. Mine is so simple. I wake up, I go to the bathroom, I get back into my bed, I open up a book and I read for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I start my day disconnected from my digital devices, focused on taking in some inspiration, some words, some viewpoints, and it's just like straight nourishment. Then I journal for just a little bit, and it's just some really, like, it's not anything I would write home about. It's like top of mind, stream of consciousness. This is what I'm thinking about. It's almost just, the practice is just being present with my thoughts. It's not like writing a masterpiece by any means. So, and then I journal. And then maybe I'll go work out, or depending on my day or the schedule, I'll do whatever's next. So for the first hour of my day, I won't get on any digital devices. I feel really strongly about that. One, because I work so heavily in the digital world and social media that it represents work, but two, because I believe our worth is it's a very physical, organic kind of entity, and it's not found on any digital devices.
Right.
So that's how I start my day. It's how I start my day, and it's become a sacred time for me that I will not compromise on. And that's big for me, because for years and years and years and years and years, the alarm went off and it was just like, go time, run, hurried, scrambled, scarcity, not enough time, no energy, like run out the door, checking my messages. So for me, my morning routine and starting my day off in that calm, grounded, spacious energy, like there's enough time for you right now. That's how I start my day. It's huge. And even on days when I'm really just going through something tough and feeling emotionally drained, that is like an anchor, because I know when I wake up, however early I need to set my alarm, I'll do it to make sure that that's how my day starts. And then the other practices that have been most supportive, in addition to like a really solid morning routine, is honoring my energy levels, which has been a whole journey and obsession in and of itself. But one of the things that has been most transformative in my life, and it's related, but it's a little bit of a tangent, is learning about the difference between how each unique human receives and gives energy. And what I'm really talking about here is like introversion and extroversion.
Yeah.
There's a sort of a spectrum, and there's a whole bunch of different theories about this. And, you know, if you're interested, you can just Google it. There's all sorts of interesting articles and resources on this. But for me, learning to honor how I give and receive energy was quite powerful, because I'm an extrovert, kind of a textbook definition of an extrovert, which means that all my energy is filled up. I receive energy from being around other people. So if I spend too much time by myself, I will get very low energy. And this is something I fought with myself on for years, because I was working from home. I was spending a lot of time alone. And I was like, why am I so down? And obviously, if I was going through a hard time anyway, from like, you know, extra, like family issues or money issues, whatever, it was just brutal. Like I was struggling so much at times. And it wasn't until I learned like, oh, Christine, you get to honor your energy source. Like, honey, like you can't expect yourself to get through tough times if you're not filled with like the energy you need. So for the introverts, just to make the point, it's the exact opposite. Introverts actually receive energy by being alone. Their alone time is where they charge up. And most people aren't one or the other. Like a lot of people are on a spectrum. Maybe they're like a little bit more towards the introvert side, but they obviously need time with people. So learning to honor my energy source and getting like a clear understanding of what that was massive, because no matter what's going on now, I know where's my energy at and what do I need to fill it back up. And so a lot of times that looks like taking a break and going and being with people, you know, calling a good friend, saying yes to a dinner invitation, even if I'm swamped, being like, nope, I'm time out this evening. I need to recharge. I'm going to where I know I'll get energy from. And just as similarly, there are times when if I've had like a really insane week and it's been nonstop, sometimes it's the honoring of myself and being like, I really get to stay in tonight, even though like there's all these fun things happening, and I'm gonna be with myself, and I'm gonna go to bed early, and I'm gonna take the time to like take care of myself. So I would say owning my worth on the hard times is as simple as sticking to my habit, my morning routine, you know, diet and exercise for sure. I think it kind of goes without saying, is massive, because it deeply impacts how I feel about myself when I'm taking care of my body. And then being really conscious of where my energy's at and knowing and honoring what I need. If I need time with people, I drop everything, go spend time with people. If I need time alone, drop everything, go spend time alone. And those have been extraordinarily supportive, because again, I'm in relationship with myself, and I think I'm worth taking care of.
Yeah.
I'm worth taking that time in the morning. I'm worth taking the time to recharge. I'm worth taking care of. And it's been a game changer for me. When I'm going through tough times, they don't rock me nearly as hard anymore, because I've learned to take care of myself, because I'm worth it.
Mm-hmm. And I think you made a very important point. And it's good to get into those Habits and routines while we feel well, because it helps to stick to them when we don't. And sometimes I like to play with my thoughts in the sense that I imagine how would life be if I change one single variable about it. So my question here for you is, what do you think? How would a world be in which everybody by default was owning their worth?
I love it. I've asked the same question to some of my podcast guests. And what I think the answer is, we would be so kind to one another.
And to ourselves.
And to ourselves, because there's no way for me to treat someone else sincerely, treat someone else differently than how I treat myself. And so it does start with me in the relationship I have with myself. But if I'm owning my worth, it's very, very, very hard for me to convince myself that someone else isn't also of worth. Yeah. Again, back to contradictions can't coexist. When I'm in ownership of the incredible gift that I am, the amazing being, the glorious masterpiece of a cocktail of things that I am, I can't treat someone else poorly. I can't put someone else down. It's so out of alignment with the way I'm living that I couldn't. I think a world in which everyone owns their worth, like we're kind to one another, we respect one another, we listen to each other, we open our minds, we look for ways to support each other, we recognize each other's differences and we celebrate them. And that's why the first word is kindness. It's seeing ourselves in each other and realizing, like, I'm of worth, you're of worth. These surface level or deep differences between us are they're not indicative of our worth. They're just some variations on the theme of human, would look a lot different, which is what's so exciting about spreading this message. Whatever sphere of influence we have, I trust it makes a difference. And that when we own our worth, we begin to treat everyone around us very differently.
Yeah. Which brings us back to what you said before, that when we own our worth, we encourage others to do the same. So how can our listeners find out more about you and the Worthful Project?
Well, since you asked,
of course.
I am obsessed with Instagram, as I know many are. So I'm at Worthful Christine on Instagram. And I'm Worthful Christine on every other social platform. So I'm definitely the most active on Instagram. But if you are a fan of the other platforms, feel free. I also post an episode every week, every Wednesday. I've titled them Worthful Wednesdays, just for fun. So every Wednesday, I put out a new podcast episode. You can listen to it on all the major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. You can also go straight to worthfulproject.com. You can see all the show notes and learn all about that. I have all my links there. So those are the best ways. But just not because I think everyone needs to follow me on Instagram, but just because that's where I'm having the most fun and sharing my day-to-day discoveries and journey. Instagram, just follow me there. And I absolutely love talking to people about this. I love it when people send me a direct message over there or a comment on the website. Like, I just light up. I can talk about this forever. So send me a message or let's start a conversation.
Yeah, and for me, or to me, Instagram is a little like a mixture of a personal diary with pictures and a blog, some kind of mini blog. That's one of the reasons why I like it, because it's a very personal format. And for everybody who is watching and listening, we'll link to all the things related to Christine below the interview. So you will surely find her. And before I'm closing this beautiful conversation, do you think there's anything we oversaw? Is there anything else that needs to be said?
Yeah, I'll never pass on an opportunity to offer a little something more, because I never know what might resonate. I think we resonate with different things. One thing I want to share that's been so personal for me, and is something that I've been taught so many times by other people, and I'm always looking to pay it forward, is that showing up and being willing to be myself publicly with the world and letting them see me, it's not always comfortable. There's risk involved. People will judge me for it at times. It's just the nature of life. We're imperfect humans. We're all dealing with our own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the feedback will not be pretty, and it won't be wanted. And that is just how it is. Like, it's not personal. It's still worth it to show up. It's still worth it to express and offer and give and be seen, because in my experience, the amount of people that can be served and elevated and inspired by your offering far outweigh the people who may take it a different way or offer, judgment in return. It's always worth it. And so my last word of encouragement is, start to practice this. Even, like, take the feedback for what it's worth, but know that there are so many more people who are being supported and elevated by you showing up as you in full ownership of what you have to offer than the people who, for a myriad of reasons of their own, won't get it right away.
Oh, thank you so much. I could go on forever.
I know.
Thank you for sharing this time and this space with me. I feel truly honored.
Thank you so much, Nina.
So, goodbye, everybody. And always remember to take the driver's seat of the car called your life and to create this lifetime to your taste. It's our pleasure here at Mind Gourmet to support you with our food for thought. Bye, Christine, and bye, everyone.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.